such as your microphone and videos are disabled for the audience. I also encourage everyone to please ask as many questions as possible. You can do the same by either writing on the chat during the session or at the end of the session by raising your hands. I would also request everyone to please maintain decorum of the session. Any malicious behavior is highly discouraged and the user causing the same will be removed from the session. You will be receiving OND resources such as copy of the presentation, recording, and other resources. Requesting everyone to please fill the attendance sheet. The link is given in the chat box and will be circulated during the session multiple times. If you're not able to access it, please let us know. You will be receiving the email within 24 hours. Please mark your attendance so that we have your email in our database and send your resources. Lastly, this is a weekly call. Should you wish your team members to join, they are welcome to do so on any Friday from 11 to 12 p.m. I would now request Supriyo to please take this session forward. Supriyo, over to you.
Thanks, Divya. You need to give me access for sharing.
Done, Supriyo.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. So what I'll do is go through a short deck on what exactly ONDC is, what are the things that we're working on right now, some of the things that we plan to do in the immediate future, and then we will get to the Q&A. So if you have any questions during the presentation, you can note it in the chat window, or please hold on until we complete the session. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, Supriyo, screen is visible.
Okay, thanks. So we'll get we'll start out with the foundational principles of ONDC. Take a bird's eye view of what exactly ONDC network looks like. Get into some of the nitty-gritties of what exactly ONDC is. Share with you some resources that we have available. Some of the things that we are working on, and where do we see ONDC heading. So to start out with the foundational principles of ONDC, now ONDC is designed very differently compared to traditional e-commerce systems. It is a decentralized network, so decentralization is at the heart of everything in ONDC. Now, when I show you the what exactly the network looks like, there is actually no center. So it is completely decentralized. Interoperability. So what we try to do is ensure interoperability between different participants. Now the network is structured in a particular way so that there are multiple participants who can actually talk to one another. And how do we ensure that interoperability? I'll get into. Openness. So everything that we do at ONDC is open. It's publicly available, right from the specs to some of the software that we develop. It's all available. Everybody will have access to that. Facilitation. So our job as ONDC org is to facilitate participants to help them on board and be and participate and be productive on the network. Minimalistic governance. So ONDC, it pretty much operates with a set of club rules. There are different participants. A network is designed to be self-correcting, and so the oversight is pretty much with the participants themselves. So they keep track of who is doing what, and whenever there are issues where ONDC has to step in, we do that. But the governance for ONDC, it will be based on the importance of a participant to the network, which is primarily based on the volume of transactions that they generate. So participant that generates huge volume of transactions, they'll obviously have additional responsibilities compared to smaller participants that generate low volume of transactions. Participant-centric, so everything that we do is for the benefit of participants. If there's one goal of ONDC, if the mission statement for ONDC has to be summarized in one sentence, it would be democratization of digital commerce. I'll explain how exactly we are trying to do that. And innovation, there are quite a few interesting things that we actually do at ONDC. So what does the network look like? So this is a bird's eye view of what exactly the ONDC network looks like. Now, if you see here, there is a so this is a network, and this is kind of partitioned into different. So we have different logical partitions, which we call as domains. So if you see these dotted vertical lines, this is what actually partitions the network into different domains. Now, in each domain, what happens is that there are buyers and there are sellers. So buyers are the ones that bring in the demand. Sellers are the ones that actually fulfill the demand. And what ONDC does is actually tries to match buyers and sellers at scale. So there will be multiple buyer apps in each domain. There could be buyer apps across domains also. There'll be multiple seller apps. So there's a lot of diversity which is out there. I mean, you could have, let's say, a very focused buyer app for food, which we have today, by the way. Or you could have a more general purpose, or what we call as super app, which does not just food but also grocery, mobility, and maybe a few other things. Now, in some of these cases, so in some of these cases, what happens is you have actual human buyers. So, for example, retail transaction, we can actually get into the PhonePe or the Paytm app and place an order. In some cases, the buyer is an API. For example, logistics. The retail seller, it acts as the logistics buyer, and the interface is completely API driven between retail and logistics. Now, on the seller side, there could be two types of sellers. One, what we call as inventory sellers, those that hold inventory and fulfill orders. So this is what we call as ISN in e-commerce lingo. So this is inventory seller node. MSN is the marketplace seller node. It's more like an aggregator. So it aggregates multiple merchants. Now, finally, when a buyer places an order, that order is fulfilled by a merchant. If the seller upholds inventory, they can fulfill that order, which is ISN, or if it is an MSN, they can kind of pass through the order to a merchant who actually fulfills that order. Now, there are, so we have now this component called the gateway. This is fairly interesting. Now, what the gateway does is it actually enables discoverability of merchants. So every search request, it goes through the gateway. So gateway kind of broadcasts that search request to all the sellers in a particular domain. And then sends the response back to the buyer app. Now, what this means is that, let's say I have a small kirana store, and somebody's searching for grocery. I'll also get that search request. Whether I respond or not, that's up to me, but I do get a chance to make myself discoverable. So that's the purpose of the gateway. It's only involved in the search operations, but after the search or the discovery phase. But after the discovery is over, then it becomes pretty much a peer-to-peer connection between the buyer and the seller. Now, the way so today we are in different categories. So today we are in grocery, food, logistics, fashion, electronics, pharma, mobility, and the other things also that we are getting into, like agriculture. Now, the way this is evolving, we'll have lots of seller apps who aggregate an even larger number of merchants, and there'll be fewer number of buyer apps. There'll be much smaller number of gateways. I mean, today we have one. We might have another one in future. Today, so we have a total of about, I think we have about close to 30 odd seller apps who aggregate almost close to 30,000 merchants. We have a single-digit number of buyer apps and catalog SKUs. We have almost it's almost about 1.5 million, about 15 lakh SKU units we have. So this is what the network looks like, and we are adding more merchants, more categories, more participants also onto the network as we evolve. Now, this is the ONDC network itself, and this is more like the network plus some additional services that are available to the network. So if you see, so I talked about the gateway. What the gateway does is it broadcasts search requests to all the participants. Now, how does the gateway know whom to broadcast to? So what the gateway does is it looks up what we call as a registry. So registry is the only component that ONDC owns. So it has a list of all the participants on the network. Now, anytime there's a search request that goes to the gateway does a lookup of the registry to find out whom to broadcast it to. And it gets the endpoints of those participants to whom it should broadcast, and then it just broadcasts the request. So the registry is the only component that ONDC owns. Now, the other network level services which are available for all participants, which are kind of the peripheral services, which is the issue and grievance, reconciliation settlement. There'll be a scoring mechanism, which is like a rating engine for ONDC built from the ground up. There'll be an open data ledger, which will kind of aggregate anonymized data in some form and make it available for the benefit of participants. Plus inter-network interoperability. Similar types of networks that come up in future, it will be interoperable with ONDC. An example is the OCEN network, which actually provides credit to small merchants. So a merchant on ONDC should be able to access OCEN to avail of credit without having to register on OCEN itself. So we do plan to ensure inter-network interoperability as well. Now, what are the building blocks of ONDC? So the building blocks of ONDC, so there's a base layer, which actually provides APIs models for digital commerce transaction. Now we ensure interoperability at the protocol layer, which is actually fairly lower down in the stack. So the base layer, what it does is it has APIs and models for. So what the base layer does is it actually any digital commerce transaction, it kind of splits it into 4 discrete steps for discovery, order, fulfillment, and post-fulfillment. Now, on top of the base layer, there's a network extension layer. What the network extension layer does is it provides network services like Revance, open data registration, online dispute resolution, which is kind of an extension of Revance, plus codified policies. There's also the API contracts for different domains, which is what ensures interoperability between the different participants. Now, some of the features of this protocol, it's an open protocol with the community governance model. Now, the verifiable DIDs, this is a pretty interesting thing. Now, if you look at the network, it is so all the endpoints are public. How do we make sure that any request that goes to a participant is a genuine request from another participant, and how do we ensure that the payload that is transmitted as part of the request is intact, not tampered in transit? So what we use is a form of verifiable DIDs, which is every participant. So keeping in mind the decentralized ethos of the network, each participant generates their own keys. So there's a key pair, asymmetric key pair, private public key. They sign using the private key, and the public key is in the registry. So whenever they send a request, they actually sign that request with the private key, and they send it to another participant, and the other participant, the recipient, they actually verify that signature by using the public key from the registry. This is what actually ensures that any request between 2 participants, it is between 2 genuine network participants, and the request is not tampered in transit. Now, bilateral negotiation through the protocol, this is something that we want to enable soon. And one example could be that, in terms of collection. Now, who does the collection? If you look at the network, what it does is it actually brings together different businesses who have their own collection and collection policies in place. Now, let's say there's a transaction that happens. Now, who gets to collect payment for the transaction? Now, today we are running an MVP. We say that the buyer app collects the payment. But once we open it up, now the buyer app may want to collect the payment. The seller app also may want to collect the payment. Now, who finally gets to collect the payment? That will be decided based on negotiation between the buyer and the seller app. Data privacy and security. So if you look at the structure of the network itself, the buyer app, it keeps the data for the buyers. Including all the PII data, seller app keeps the data for the sellers. And there's a very small amount of data which actually gets transmitted from the buyer app to the seller app with proper consent, which is required to actually fulfill the order. An example is the buyer name, contact number, which is actually required if the seller has to fulfill the order. When the logistics delivery person, they need to reach out to the buyer, they need to know the contact details. So a very limited amount of information is actually passed along from the buyer to the seller. And global interoperability. So ONDC is not just designed to be a India play, but also to facilitate cross-border commerce and be globally interoperable with similar networks in future. Now, getting into some of the nitty-gritties. So if you look at the any digital commerce transaction, what the base protocol does is it actually it kind of splits it into 4 discrete steps. So for discovery, order, fulfillment, post-fulfillment. Now, discovery is where there's a search. So it's more like a search and browse operation by the buyer through the buyer app. The seller publishes the catalog. And along with the catalog, they can also provide like dynamic offers and add-ons. Then buyer creates a cart. They check out the cart. They make the payment. After that, they can update the order either through returns or cancels. Fulfillment, once the order has been placed, they can actually track that order through to fulfillment. And then after fulfillment is over, the post-fulfillment part, which is the rating for a participant, that can also be provided by the buyer. So these are like the 4 discrete steps which actually standardizes the transaction flow. So if you look at it, any digital commerce transaction, it can actually be split into these 4 discrete steps, and it can be executed with the protocol that is available today. Now, mapping the transaction flows to the APIs. So discovery, order fulfillment, post fulfillment. So these are the APIs. If you see the API on the top row, the search, select, init, confirm. These are the APIs which have to be enabled by the seller apps and kind of called by the buyer app. And the APIs at the bottom, the on search, on select, these are like the callbacks which the seller app calls on the buyer app. Now, these are asynchronous APIs. So asynchronous API is like a 2-step process. A request is made, there's an acknowledgement that comes, and after that there's a fallback that happens. Now, how does this work? So let's say I go into the buyer app and places a search request for Atta. The buyer app actually creates a search request as per the payload that's defined in the API contract and sends it to the gateway. Gateway broadcasts it to all the seller apps that have said that they're a part of grocery. All the seller apps, they can respond back with the on search callback, and then the buyer app renders the catalogs that have come. Now, once I see the catalogs for different merchants, I can actually go and when I have to create an order, I actually go and select a specific merchant from which I want to for which I want to place the order. So I create the cart, which is I select specific items for which I get a quote. Then I do a checkout, which is the init and non-init. Then I actually place the order. So I need to make the payment. Then I place the order. The seller, they accept the order in non-confirm. Either it's a auto accept or a deferred accept. After that, if I want to update the order, maybe I want to. So the update could be used either by the buyer or it could be used by the seller app also. So typically in cases of logistics, which is on network, if the seller app has to inform the logistics provider that a package is ready to ship, they can actually use the update call to tell them to come and pick up the order. Cancel. Now it may happen that I placed an order. The merchant realized that it is not in stock, won't be available in stock for a few days, so they might decide to cancel it, or I might decide to cancel it. I've changed my mind, I want to cancel the order. That also I can do, but there's a window within which cancellation has to happen. Fulfillment, so the status of the order, that is actually displayed. So once the order is placed, the status gets updated in real time. So when the order is picked up, when the order is packed, when it has been picked up, when it is out for delivery, when it is delivered. So all that is tracked in real time. And then after the fulfillment is over, the rating, which is used to actually provide so the buyer can use the rating engine to actually provide their experience with regards to either the product or the service for that particular order. Now the protocol specs, these are published on GitHub. Swagger endpoints are also available. Spec documents are here. So I'll just walk you through some of these things. Now the tech quick start guide. Let me just show you. So we have a GitHub repo. So this is our GitHub repo. If you see ONDC, github.com/ONDC official. Now here we have all the. So here we have the different repositories. Now the protocol network extension. So if you see this repo, so there's a discussion board, which is fairly active discussion board where we. So we have a fairly community-driven model of development. Anytime we want to enable a new feature, either us or participants, they actually write a spec, they publish it here. Other participants comment on it, and then we formalize the process of incorporating it into the release plan. So this is one of the, so you can actually feel free to look at the specs and comment on this in the discussion board here. So the developer log. So we also have some reference implementation, some of the apps. So we have utilities available. I think one of the things that you would be interested in is, one of the things that you can look at is signing and verification, for example. We have a utility which is defined for signing and verification. You can actually download this, generate it on your site. So it is available in Python, Golang. Then there is the developer docs, where we actually have some documents that we publish for developers. One of these things is the tech quick start guide. So you can actually look at the API contracts which I was telling about. It's here. Okay, so there are there's some more documentation here also, which is available. Protocol network extension. If you come to the main page, there are some documents which are available here as well. Now coming back to the tech quick start guide. So some of the things that are in the tech quick start guide. One is, so we have a ONDC reference app. You can actually check this here. The protocol specs, which are on GitHub, Swagger Hub. Some spec documents. So for example, how does cancellation returns replacements happen on ONDC? The payment settlement protocol, how exactly payment settlement will happen, author signing and verification, author sign. So author signing and verification, reference web app, source code, mobile reference app, APK, checklist for sellers. So there's quite a few, documents which are available, including the specs. So feel free to go through that and comment on this. Okay. So now coming back to some of the other things that we're working on at ONDC. Now, one is we are also working on a distributed catalog store. So if you look at what we do on ONDC today, it's that. Just give me 1 second. So if you look at what we are doing on ONDC today, there's a distributed catalog store. Now, distributed catalog store, what it does is, so today if you look at ONDC, there are multiple participants, and each participant, so more than 50% of the SKUs, those are kind of branded products. Now, for catalog compliance, a minimum set of information is required. Like you need a proper image, you need the manufacturer details, you need to give, let's say, so if you're selling a bag of chips, you need to provide FSA number. So there's like some standard set of information which is required, without which buyer apps won't even display those, the catalog SKUs. Now, it has been a problem for participants to actually, provide all this kind of information, and either getting a proper image, or getting all the details of the manufacturer, the manufacturer contact details, and all that. So what we're trying to do through the distributed catalog store is kind of create a repository which has a catalog of all these branded items which are sourced from the brand owners themselves, and participants can actually use it to sync up their catalog data on their side. So that's available on our GitHub. You can actually check it. So it's available in the public repo. Now, next generation UX. Now, one of the goals that we have as ONDC is to bring in a whole new generation of buyers and merchants who've been kind of left out of the mainstream of digital commerce so far. Now to further that goal, we need like a next generation of UX, something more like an assisted type of UX, which can actually help the non-tech savvy buyers participate in digital commerce. Native Indic language support. This is very important. And even some of the things that are required to bring in a lot of these small merchants, kirana stores onto the networks. For example, fast digitization of catalogs. I know there are a lot of startups that are working on this problem, which actually promise to kind of bring online in-store within 30 minutes. So a lot of these kind of things we are, we have plans for. So it's not just ONDC, but ONDC and the extended community of participants. Search will always be an area of innovation. So we started out with a very structured search, but now we are slowly incorporating free text search. There'll be other kinds of searches that will happen, like voice search, fuzzy search, but even search could also be driven through, automated interfaces. Distributed ledger. So distributed ledger, we are starting out with the distributed ledger for the rating, the network-wide rating system, but we'll also enable distributed ledger for other things like open data and a few other areas. ODR, online dispute resolution. So looking at the state of consumer courts in the country today, ODR is something that we are enabling. It actually provides an avenue for participants to resolve the disputes before they go to court. This will be like a extension of the issue and grievance management that we'll have in place. And finally, the technologies that we plan to mainstream, which is anything from, so if you look at something like route optimization, open source maps. Now, maps is a very critical component, in digital commerce today. Pretty much every participant needs to have some mapping technology in place, either to check for serviceability or to find the motorable distance, and so on and so forth. So most of the mapping technologies that participants use today, that is actually licensed and it's expensive. We are looking at how to make available a lot of these things in open source, so that not just the large participants, but even the smaller ones can also have access to it. Dynamic pricing, non-deterministic inventory management. Now, these are technologies which are available to high-end retailers, but not necessarily. So the Walmarts of the world have access to this, but not necessarily the SMEs or the Kirana stores. Now, these kinds of technologies, if we kind of push it down, it will actually be beneficial for everyone and for ONDC's mission as well. Now, so again, summarizing, distributed catalog of branded products, Indic language support, protocol-based negotiation, technology for small merchants, trustless digital commerce, verifiable transactions. Now, opportunities in tech. So for tech service providers in today's call, so there are quite a few areas where you can contribute. SDKs. So we had participants that were with us since the beginning. They have now started with their expertise in ONDC today. They have now started creating SDKs, which will actually enable new participants to come on board much faster. So we have, as part of ONDC, buyer app, seller app, which is more like a reference app. We actually have SDKs which are available, but there's a requirement for lots and lots of SDKs. I know others are working on it, but SDK is something that will actually benefit more and more participants to come and participate in the network. Lightweight apps, super apps. So there's a requirement for different kinds of apps. So you might have a lightweight app, which actually focuses, which actually works in bandwidth constraint environment. There'll be super apps which cater to multiple categories of products. Intuitive guided buying experience, which is more to do with assisted buying. Decentralized ledgers for reputation, promise, open data. So reputation. Reputation is the rating engine that I talked about. Open data, where we aggregate kind of data in an anonymized form and make it accessible to others. Promise. This is a pretty interesting thing, which is today when a buyer actually sends a request, they sign it. It's more like a promise that they're making, to the seller, saying that I'll buy these things and I'll pay you so much money. But is there any way to do it other than the key pairs that we have and which are kind of stored within a closed environment? So we're looking at a promise ledger, which is something which is going to. I mean, this is still in the initial phases, but it could be something pretty interesting. Online dispute resolution, which is where which is the extension of the IGM that I talked about. Formal languages. So today, if you look at it, we have specs. We have written in YAML. There are a lot of limitations. API contracts, it's like API contracts, it actually defines two things. One is, the mandatory requirements and plus the behavior. Behavior is very difficult to codify right now. So, formal languages could actually play a significant role there. And reconciliation settlement services, which is to ensure automated reconciliation settlement between different participants on the network. So in future, where do we look at ONDC? Completely trustless digital commerce, transactions that are verifiable, SDKs abstracted to a level of smart contracts so that participants can just layer their value add on top of the SDK and participate in digital commerce, and then individualized negotiated contracts between buyer and seller, pretty much the way it works in the physical world today. So that's all that we have in the deck today. And we'll get to questions now. So just give me 1 second. We'll start out with this questions in the chat window, and then we'll take other questions. How to get defined categories of products, sellers, etc. Okay, so we have so the defined categories of products. So today, so we have a taxonomy that we publish, which actually has the so what we do in terms of the taxonomy is publish a list of categories that we support in ONDC today, and the taxonomy that we support, it's actually it's at a fairly granular level, but it's like a flat taxonomy, and participants can actually take it and they can provide the intelligence and provide the kind of catalog tree on the buyer app side, so that buyers can have a much more intuitive interface to navigate. So that is available. You'll have access to that as part of the ONDC integration guide. Has the sample seller app been released? Yes, that is available. You can actually check it in our GitHub repo. Is there any certification process for TSP in the apps? Yes, so there is a certification process. So what we do is we so after a participant, so there's a process that we follow, which is that you start out in what we call as a staging environment. From staging, you go to pre-production. Pre-production, after so in staging and in pre-prod, you have to actually execute a use case, give a demo, and then after the pre-production use case is over, we certify your logs for compliance, and then there is an operations compliance also, which we do, where we actually test some of the use cases and the end-to-end flows before we enable you on the live network. Is there any category that ONDC team prioritizing in the next few quarters? Category, so we have grocery, F&B, we have mobility, we have fashion, beauty and personal care, electronics, pharma. I think these are the ones that we're working on, and we'll be focused on these at least for the next few months. Technical team has reached key pair stage in integration. Okay, what is this? The technical team has reached key pair stage in integration. What next to January? I'm not sure what exactly key pair stage is. So if you have to so what you need to do is you need to get added to the staging registry. For getting added to the staging registry, you need to provide some information like what are your endpoints and all that, and then you also need to generate key pairs, send your public key, get added to the registry. Once you get added to the registry, you can start developing APIs, where you talk to other participants, get the end-to-end flows working, and then you can give a demo in staging. After that, you come to pre-prod. Pre-prod, you do pretty much the same thing, but with a restricted set of participants. And we have some requirements, like you have to, if you're a seller app, you test it out with 2 buyer apps. If you're a buyer app, test it out with 2 seller apps, and then do the log compliance, and then get into production. After the ops compliance check is through. How to register for the staging environment? Any documents available? Yes, you'll get that as part of the ONDC integration guide. The student team trying to implement a buyer application on this is trying to further but we don't have an organization. Currently, can register institute as an organization, can do the including test application. See, finally, when you join ONDC, so if you want to create a buyer app and make it available to others, you can actually sell your buyer app, or you can license your buyer app to somebody else who wants to be a participant on the network. But finally, what happens is anyone who participates on the network, they need to sign a network participant agreement. So it has to be an organization, who signs the network participant agreement, agrees to the terms and conditions, and then they can transact on the network. So if you create a buyer app, you can license it to an organization which can actually participate, by signing on the ONDC network participant agreement and becoming a part of the network. Current payment flow between buyer apps, seller apps, and payment flows when ONDC gateway RSP is involved. Current payment flow is that the buyer app and seller app, so buyer app collects the payment, they settle with the seller app on T+2. Once RSP is involved, RSP will actually automate this whole process. So today, the settlement is manual. They send out spreadsheets, to the counterparty participants, but RSP is only going to automate it, so that settlement will happen. It will actually give you notification that the payment has been credited. Plus, if there are payment corrections that need to be made, that entire flow will get automated as part of the RSP process. If I want to be an aggregator of sellers, I can do that. If I want to be an aggregator of aggregator of sellers, I can do that as an MSN and also as a TSP as well. What kind of function does it make someone prefer MSN over TSP? No, TSP is not a participant in the network. TSP is more like a tech service provider whose software is used by somebody else to participate. MSN is actually a participant on the network. That's the difference. Should we implement all APIs to get into the staging? No, you can get into staging and enable all APIs, but before you get into pre-prod, you have to have all APIs enabled. Is there any live website where you can look at adoption trends of ONDC data city-wise to get access to this data? So there is some information available on the ONDC website. You can check that. Can search be provided as part of TSP? There could be search SDKs that TSPs can provide, which participants can use. Want to register the logistics? You have to register key pair from our website. You have to register key pairs, using the utility. Some of it is available on the ONDC GitHub repo, but you can also generate using other open source software which is available, publicly. Can we change the endpoints and keys after registry also? Yes, you can. In staging, distributed catalog is for merchants to add update catalog. It also serves the discovery request. No, it's only for merchants to add update, because discovery request will only be from between buyer and seller. As a TSP, are there onboarding APIs available that can be used to productize onboarding of sellers onto ONDC instead of the forms that seem to be the current method? Well, onboarding, one part is that when you come on board ONDC, we take some information from you so that we can be in touch with you. The actual onboarding of participant onto ONDC, that happens through we have an API. You can actually call that API and be a part of the registry. How can we contact you for an answer? So there is a email ID, team@ondc.org. You can connect with us there. How to register and staging? So you'll get the information in the integration gate, settlement, the transaction +2 or delivery date or return bill date. So typically, if you look at grocery, food, the return window it's either not there or it's like a few minutes, and the delivery happens on the same day. So it's pretty much, you can say, the date of delivery +2. Building an RSP, how do we go ahead with testing if our service is working as expected? How do you sample test? So what we do is, for enabling you, we actually create test cases as well. So we have published some of the test cases on the on our resources folder, but others will also publish. But you need to develop your test cases as per the use cases, submit those test cases, submit the logs based on that, and then we will review it and certify you. You meant to say that we should have to develop fresh up as per this program platform. Yes. See, ONDC, if you look at the protocol itself, it is just like a it facilitates interoperability between different participants. In other words, it's more like how you talk to another participant through some standard language. But the backend ONDC does not prescribe what kind of backend you need. So the backend you still have. If you are a seller app, now there is a particular way in which you need to communicate with the buyer app, but in the backend you might have a Shopify, a Shopify e-commerce system, for example, which actually maintains all your orders, keeps track of your fulfillments, payments, settlement, all that. So all that ONDC does is, provides you a way to communicate in an interoperable way with another participant. How to subscribe to the ONDC registry? Again, you'll get it from the integration guide. Can we access the gateway, pilot gateway? So gateway information is there in the integration guide. You can check that. An option to choose logistics as of now. No, that's not available right now, but that might come in later. Retail seller and website is in Shopify platform. We have a payment gateway as well. Platform by ShipRocket. Integrated with the website, will you able to use this to onboard also on seller? No, you can. So if you are a retail seller, you can be a participant on the network, and so that is one way. Or you can come in through another aggregator. Now the seller app, Amazon is not there yet. Snapdeal is coming. My Store is there. There are quite a few others also who are aggregators on the network. That list is on our website. So you have both options available. Planning to onboard service-related segments like travels. Travel is going to come. Mobility is a part of travel. Salon, I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you. How long does it generally take to get registered on the network as an MSMTSP automated? So that is pretty fast. I mean, you fill up the form and you should be a part of the network in staging. But to get to the live network, that can take you anything from 3 weeks to 3 months or more. How can I test my cell aggregator service in staging? Is there any framework available? So you can test it. I mean, you can execute your use cases, and just if you follow the steps in the integration guide, you should be able to proceed with that. Selection logistics button have to be done manually. Or is it? No, it's actually automated through an API. Do we need something else to do apart from filling NP form for registering? No, you don't need. What if a particular application does not need logistics provider? You can also do self-fulfillment. It's not mandatory to have a logistics provider. Can I control the logistics partner to use seller app? Always choose to use done. Yes, you can do that. That's the choice of the seller anyway. How does the discoverability engine and algorithm work as a potential buyer search for account on Google? Now, how I discuss it? How so limited to those buyers such an ONDC portal? No, ONDC. So ONDC buyer seller apps. Any request that goes from ONDC doesn't go to the gateway. It doesn't go to Google. It only gets processed within the ONDC network itself. Now, if Google sends a search request to any of ONDC participants, that will not be honored because the request will be invalid because it can't be verified until Google becomes a participant in the network. What is logging service already implemented? No, logging service we don't have that right now, but we are enabling enabling some basics in terms of how to handle error for doing error handling on the network. So my store not visible. Other virus when is Paytm from there. It is generally visible, but if you see some products which are like this, just let us know what exactly those products are. What is the starting point of onboarding? You'll get that in the integration guide. Does seller need to manually confirm the order before order gets confirmed to the end? Is there any mandatory? Yes, so seller has to accept the order before the order gets placed. And now it need not be manual. I mean, so many cases it is like auto accepted. In some cases it could be manual, but typically there'll be some interface with the seller POS, for acceptance and rejection of the order. Is TSP gateway sends such request to TSP or to individual? No, TSP in TSP gateway. I'm not sure what this question is. In TSP gateway sends such request. No. TSP is again not a participant on the network, so gateway is never going to send a request to a TSP. Building an RSP service, you have to check for compliance with the spec. Plus, you also have to execute the test cases that we're going to publish. Integration guide, you'll receive it. Products and categories of milestone not visible. Now you have to tell us which products you're talking about, because all the products of any seller, the catalogs of any seller will be visible to any buyer app. But if there are specific products that are for which this is happening, let us know what those are. Subscriber will need to be unique for each network participant. Yes. Subscriber URL. So subscriber ID is like a unique ID for each participant, and the subscriber URL also has to be unique because subscriber URL actually identifies the endpoint. Something else to do apart from filling NP form registering? No. Settlement from selected. Gateway is outside the gateway. Settlement is nothing to do with gateway. Settlement is based on terms and conditions agreed to between the buyer and the seller. Encrypted public key, as of now, the encryption is only in case of the challenge response that we do for registry subscription. We haven't yet enabled that, for the payload. Support subscription model, I'm not sure what it means. Multiple sellers, we have same domains. That is possible, yes. Okay, so that's all the questions that we have. Okay, I think a few more are there. How can we onboard ourselves at TSP? You'll get, you go through the information that will be provided. You can follow that. What if the seller is not happy with the service? The one TSP wants to or just want to register simply be clear, they'll do that. Again, seller. So the seller is the participant. TSP is not the participant. So if the seller wants to change the TSP, which is moved from one software to another, one software provider to another, they're free to do it. If they want to change the DPP, they can do it also, but they have to follow the, it has to follow the SOP that we have defined for that. What about those TSP who are having multiple as for different types of products? Where the brand someone should register. So I'm not sure what is the issue here. A brand someone should register on a buyer app platform, register as seller, not ISP. Brand typically they should register, as a seller. Either you can have a seller node as an ISP, or you can be under some aggregator. If I list my products in my store, customers on Meesho be able to see it. A My Store seller app, yes. Search for groceries in Paytm. I'm not getting grocery sellers. I have Paytm as a buyer app. If you get into Paytm, on the Paytm homepage, you'll actually see, there's a ONDC banner. You get into that. So it's like a combination of browse and search. You get into the ONDC banner, get into groceries, then you can search for whatever you want to buy. You try searching for yoga bar, you'll get, responses for that. Can two sellers have same domain of subscriber URL but different URLs by adding URL path parameter? Same domain of subscriber URL, that is possible. Some apps are on MSN, ISN, both models. I'm not sure what exactly the requirement is here. Register encryption keys with the gateway registry. There is a process which is documented in the integration guide. Frequency of fetching data from seller node, string and buyer node. That different buyer apps, they have different frequencies. TSPs charging apps. What is the commercial model? No, there's no guardrail. So that is between the participants and the TSPs. Okay, so that's all the questions. Seller sell subscription. That is what I meant by subscription model. Seller sell subscriptions. You mean the seller app, having a kind of subscription model for sellers? Possible. That's again between the seller app, seller, ONDC has nothing to do with it. Okay, we have time for, I think, a few questions. So we'll get to that. Yeah, Vidya. What's your question? Divya, I think they are muted. If you can let them speak.
Sure, Supreme. So they can go ahead and unmute themselves. Yeah.
Yeah, hi, Supriyo. We are referring a sample buyer app. So while we are going there,
Okay.
we are able to search for a product that we are able to do, and add to cart is working. After that, we are not able to do any place order or do cancellation. That and all we are not able to play around. The sample buyer app.
Sorry, can you repeat that? Sample buyer
The
app?
sample buyer app portal, we
Ah.
have logged in and we are able to search for a
Just give me 1
product.
second. Yeah, sorry. Can you repeat your question again?
Yeah, we are playing around on sample buyer app portal, whatever you have shared. So we are able to go and search a product, and we are able to add that product to cart. That we are able to do, but we are not able to proceed with the order or to cancellation. That process we are not play around over there.
So what happens is cancellation of an order. If you see the API contract, there are some rules around it. I mean, first of all, the item should be cancelable. So there are a lot of these make to order items, right, which are not cancelable. So just check, what are the properties of those items that you've selected in that order. If it is cancelable, then you should be able to cancel that order from the order
we are not
page.
able to place the order itself.
You're not able to place the order in the sample buyer app.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have been staging. It's actually, So staging, what happens is so there's some amount of cleanup that needs to be done. I know some of the things they work properly. So if you're in Bangalore, try shampoo. Try searching for shampoo or tea. You should be able to. That should go through. Vidya?
Okay.
Try that. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
we will try that.
Okay.
Another one, could you please brief about that order settlement between buyer and seller?
See, the settlement, what happens is today buyer pays the buyer app. Buyer app, settles with the seller app, and seller app will settle with the seller logistics provider, whosoever it is. So it follows that process today, because today it's only prepaid collection by the buyer app. Okay, Vidya?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Next question is from Balaji.
Hey, thanks, Supriyo. So one quick question on the subscription. Sorry to coming back again on that.
Yeah.
So subscription, so suppose I subscribe for 6 months. Even the subsequent deliveries, the first delivery, second delivery, the payments have to go through, and then the order has to be shipped. I mean, they also have to be tracked by ONDC, right? Ratings and other things, whether it happened or not. So you said ONDC doesn't have a role to play there. So I'm just wondering.
No. Can you repeat your question? Sorry.
Suppose there is a subscription. Let's say I'm a beauty service provider, beauty product provider. Let's say, and then I offer a service. I offer a subscription. As a user, they can actually subscribe to, let's say, for 6 months. Every month interval, they'll get that whatever cream that I offer, right? So once I acquire, so 6 months I'll keep delivering them every month, and then for every month I would have to get paid, and then I deliver, right? So that model, a subscription model, is one of the in e-commerce. As you know, it's a very common model, especially on the beauty side.
Yeah.
So just wondering, ONDC has a role to play, especially in pharma.
No, so I understand what you're saying. So subscription model, it could be offered by a seller to a buyer, right?
Exactly.
So it's not. So I think from your question, I interpreted that as more of a seller to a seller, but it's more like a seller to a buyer. Right? When I place an order, it could be a one-time order. It could be like a recurring order for a certain duration, right? Which is basically what subscription is.
Correct.
But it will follow the same process in any other order, right?
Oh, okay. So seller will go and place the order. Okay, understood. I think I understood. Thank you. Thank you, Supriyo.
Okay. Yeah, Nishant.
Hey, hi everyone. Good morning. Hi, Supriyo.
Hi.
This is the questions regarding, with respect to the buyer app. We are looking forward to be a buyer app. So I just wanted, the frequency of the inventory update and the catalog update with respect to the products, from the seller app that should be visible in the buyer app portal.
Yeah. So see the catalog update now. What happens is, if you see the catalogs, those are owned by the sellers. Buyer apps, they kind of pull the catalog, they can display it.
Okay.
Now, what is the frequency at which they pull the catalogs? That is again based on the buyer app. And it depends. I mean, some are pulling it once a day, some are pulling it like every 4 hours. That is for the buyer app to decide. Now, to make sure that inventory prices, those are in sync, what we are doing is making some refinements so that there could be like a full catalog pull, there could be like a part catalog pull. So that will take care of it. But typically, what will happen is that there might be a full catalog pull that happens once a week. There'll be incremental pulls that happen maybe once every half an hour or so, and that'll So I think the final goal is probably like a push, a real-time push for inventory price changes and all that. But that'll happen at some point of time. But as of now, we are just going with the pull model.
So currently, there's no real-time update. Means like all the seller data is cached in the buyer app kind of a thing, and there's no live search, right?
There are some buyer apps which actually provide live search, but the major buyer apps, they do it through a caching model, and that is pretty much to do with how hyperlocal works. Because if you look at a grocery or F&B, it is actually a store-based model, right? So to provide a store-based model, and considering some of the restrictions that we have, in the sense that we don't allow a provider-based search. what buyer apps do is they actually pull the entire catalog, then they kind of store it, and then they provide a a store-based kind of experience to the buyer.
So in case of inventory, is it like if the order is not fulfilled, means it would show in the same flow, the inventory is not present, that is
Yes, yes. So that actually shows up in the flow itself. So let's say I ordered 2 bananas and it tells me only 1 is available. It actually shows it to me saying that only 1 is available. Do you want to continue? Or in some cases, it might even show me that, okay, inventory, it's out of stock. Please, do you want to order something else? So that it does.
That update is almost real time.
That is real time. So we have, like I showed you, the APIs like search, select, and all that, right?
Correct.
Search is from the cache, but select is real time. So the prices that you see, the current inventory. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Shubhra. Thanks.
Sure. Okay. Next question from Saket. So we have 1 minute. We need to complete 3 questions. Okay, Saket, over to you.
Hey, I had 2 quick questions. One is the payment piece from the buyer apps to the seller apps and logistics providers. Do you have some plumbing or infrastructure to help with it, or all of this needs to be operationally managed?
See, payment, it has to be managed operationally. I mean, ONDC is not going to provide any, payment plumbing pieces. But you have a payment infrastructure which is already available, right? I mean, if you have UPI, you have, all these payment processes which are there. So all that the participants need to do is integrate with one of them. It will facilitate the payment and settlement.
Right, got it. So we'll need to integrate, calculate these charges, or use
what? Right. Typically, if you look at the buyer apps, right? Paytm, they have their own PG. PhonePe has their own PG. They collect the payment, and then settlement is happening. Yes, I mean, the actual transfer of money is automated, but the settlement information that is kind of manually transferred, but that will get automated as part of the RSP.
Got it. And the other question is, I had asked this on chat. Looking at adoption status of ONDC, right? I see Plotch has one live database that shows up searches on a live basis. How do we get access to that data, or is there any other?
That is not what Plotch shows. It is more like from the staging environment. That is not from production.
I see.
Right.
Okay. Yeah. Is there any way to understand production?
ONDC, if you look at this whole network, right, it is decentralized. So it's ONDC doesn't know what kind of transactions are going on. I mean, we only get notified when there are some issues.
I see.
So participants know what is happening on the network.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Okay, next question is from LP Abhay Kumar.
Hey, Supriya. Hi, thanks.
Hey.
So we are working on RSP, and we are looking at testing our use cases, right? And on staging area, so essentially the requests we get from collector or the calls we make to the settlement agency, these are all network participants. So how do we go about verifying how our service is working when we are in staging or when we are developing the service?
So can you? So what we'll do is there are a limited set of participants who are actually working on RSP. Maybe you can do a lookup call and see if there are other RSPs in staging or not. But my understanding is that there are very few of them which are working today. Now, how do you make sure it is working or not? I'll have to get back to you on that. Can you send a mail to?
Sure. Yeah, I'll do that. Thank you.
I've posted the email ID here. Just post the mail. I'll get back to you on that. Okay. Last question from Rootgate Technologies.
Hi, Supriya. Good afternoon.
Yeah. Hi.
Well, I have a very quick question. That a couple of our applications are on MSN and ISN tracks both. So what happens that we also hold our own inventory. We have a couple of stores as well as we have the aggregator business also within the same app. So we should be going through ISN track or MSN track, and will that be compliant if we go with the ISN track?
That's your choice, whether you want to be an ISN or an MSN.
But there will be no non-compliant issue, correct?
No, that depends. I mean, what do you mean by compliance? So you choose your role, whether you want to be an ISN or MSN.
My concern about compliance that tomorrow ONDC can say that, hey, you are an MSN app and then you have registered under ISN track, how it is possible, or we have ISN.
No, do one thing. What I would suggest is you look at the when you actually register. So I pointed to some of the information, just go through that and go through our network policies also to, look at the requirements for registering as an MSN, ISN, and you'll figure out which role you want to participate as.
All right. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. We are out of time. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you.